All right, everybody, welcome back to another deep dive with us. Today we are diving into J.D. Vance's recent CNN interview with Jake Tapper and unearthing some fascinating insights into the political landscape. So if you're ready to explore some of the fault lines and the shifting sands of the current political scene, you're in the right place. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment below with your thoughts because we love hearing from you guys.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, I think. We're going to unpack some of the undercurrents within the Republican Party and maybe get a glimpse into the future of where things are headed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's no secret that there has been some shifting allegiances within the Republican Party. And we see some pretty stark examples of this play out in the interview that we're going to be focusing on today.
Right.
So just to set the scene a little bit, we have J.D. Vance, the Republican VP candidate, on CNN being interviewed by Jake Tapper. And the conversation kind of revolves around this question of why some prominent Republicans seem to be distancing themselves from Trump.
Yeah, and Vance offers this really unexpected explanation.
Yeah. He suggests that these Republicans, and he specifically names Mike Pence, turned away from Trump because they felt like they just couldn't control him and his desire for peace in the world. I mean, it's a really interesting take, right?
It is, and I think what's even more striking is Tapper's reaction to this. It's not just skepticism or pushback. He actually laughs.
He kind of chuckles.
Right, and I think that says a lot about how Trump is generally perceived, right? This history of unpredictable actions. It really kind of makes you wonder if anyone, even Pence when he was his VP, ever really believed that they could control Trump's decision-making.
Yeah, and I think, this kind of highlights a point that you and I have talked about before, which is, sometimes these interviews are really revealing, not just because of what the interviewee says, but also because of how the interviewer responds, right? And so I think Tapper's response here is just as important as Vance's original statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if we rewind a little bit, back in March, Pence explicitly stated that he wouldn't be endorsing Trump. He was very clear about this and really emphasized that their political agendas no longer aligned. So on the one hand, you have Pence saying, look, I'm distancing myself from Trump. We just don't agree on things anymore. And on the other hand, you have Vance coming in with this completely different interpretation saying, no, it's not about disagreement. It's about control and this yearning for global peace. I mean, it's a very different lens through which to view the situation.
It really is. And I think, for me, what's really interesting is that it raises questions about Vance's motivations for offering this explanation. Is it genuine, right? Does he actually believe this? Or is this a carefully crafted talking point? Is he trying to spin the narrative in a way that benefits Trump or paints him in a more favorable light?
Yeah. And, I think it's always important for us to remember when we're diving into these interviews that we're not just dealing with words on their own, but also with strategy and with tactics and with, kind of political maneuvering. And so I think that it's a valid question to ask whether Vance is speaking from the heart here or whether he's playing a more calculated game.
Exactly.
And then there's the bigger picture, right? What does all of this say about the Republican Party as a whole? Is this a sign of deeper division within the party? Are we seeing a widening gap between those who are still fully on board with Trump and those who are starting to look for a different path forward?
I think that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think one thing that's worth considering is this phrase, peace in the world. What does that even mean in the context of Trump's foreign policy? How does that line up with his actions on the world stage? I think exploring that a little bit further might give us some clues about how to interpret Vance's statement.
Yeah, I think you make a great point that, words are powerful and they can be open to interpretation. And sometimes it's not enough to just hear the words themselves, but you have to kind of look at them in the broader context of, the actions and the history of the individual that's uttering them. And so, yeah, I think peace in the world is a very loaded phrase, and it'd be interesting to unpack that a little bit further.
Absolutely.
So as always, we're left with more questions than answers. But I think we've had a really interesting deep dive into this interview. We've seen some contrasting narratives. We've heard some surprising statements. And I think it's really given us a sense of just how much the political landscape is continuing to evolve. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to see a lot more of these kinds of dynamics play out as we move closer to the election.
Absolutely. All right, guys, well, that was our deep dive into J.D. Vance's CNN interview. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments down below. We want to hear what you guys think. Is the Republican Party fracturing? Is this just a blip on the radar? We want to know what your take is. Until next time, happy diving.